All right, welcome to The Dish Course, the podcast that has hot food takes,
cool food people,
and never a lukewarm moment.
If you're new here, we're a podcast where we dish and debate on the latest food trends and fads.
And as experts who work deeply within the food service industry for today's biggest global brands, nothing makes us more excited than really digging into what, how, and why people eat.
If you love impromptu conversations about today's food landscape, come on in and watch the plates fly.
I'm Chef Renee. I help direct an R&D culinary test kitchen, and I think my love language is developing flavors that make people say, whoa.
I'm Callie, trends expert, nutritionist, and while I'm still trying to work on it, I think sushi's overhyped.
And I'm Chef Cam. I manage a team of R&D chefs, and crab rangoons are an S-tier appetizer.
Callie, why don't you tell us what we're going to be talking about today?
Okay, let's get into it, guys. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the 2025 trends that have been reported by many different sources because, I mean, that's my favorite part of January is all of these different sources finally put out these reports that we wait for several months at the end of the year. And we're going to start by talking about our macro trends, which are kind of our broader trends. They're trends that typically last more than just a year. So it's not necessarily an ingredient, but they're things that we see influence food and beverage across retail and also food service and across categories as well. So things like health and wellness, global inspiration, and yeah, we're going to get into it today, but we've been seeing global flavors of all kinds proliferate food service for years now, but it has become much more dramatic since the pandemic. I think people spent so much time locked up in their homes, which I guess also pushed them to wish they had more opportunities to go out and eat different kinds of food. But also the other thing is that they started cooking more at home. So even people who weren't necessarily chefs in the kitchen all the time started experimenting with their own flavors because they were like, I don't want to eat the same thing every day. Makes sense. And so now we have people wanting to eat all these different kinds of cuisines, and consumers really want to expand their palates. So we are seeing beyond just like Italian, Chinese, Indian, we're seeing much more regional cuisine. And specifically this year, we're seeing a lot of Asian flavors over the last few years, but specifically this year, they're calling out Burmese, Indonesian, and Filipino, which I know is near and dear to your heart, Cam.
Yeah. No, like I love everything about that. And like what I've kind of shared with you, and just even going into culinary school too, and being surrounded by food, a lot of international students just always hearing that like Filipino food was going to be the next big thing. And granted, this was like, I'm going to age myself, like 7-8 years ago, where it's like, it's going to be here. But then it's like, you see it's that year and it's like, oh, where is it? But the fact that I think like a major player in that is social media and TikTok, where everybody was like you were kind of stuck at home looking at your phone, and then lo and behold, we have Dalgona coffee come out of nowhere and everybody's just partaking in this trend. But then we're also seeing a lot of those globally inspired flavors pop up in beverages. And that's where I think a lot of, some people are a little bit more hesitant with trying some of those flavors in, we'll say like an appetizer or entree. But when it comes to beverages specifically, there's a lot more willingness to try things. So like any kind of tropical fruit. So like guava being a big one that you see, passion fruit, mango, even though it's pretty ubiquitous, but like combining sweet flavors of mango with spice. We saw a lot of stuff with mango nata over the past couple of years. So really like that, and the fact that this overall trend of globally inspired foods really makes me happy to see that like people are really open to trying new things.
And it's interesting to see the difference between talking about specific flavors and talking about cuisines, because it felt like for a long time we talked about like, oh, cardamom is like the next big thing. I remember that's what like Flavor in the Menu put out as one of their 2020 trends. And now instead of like talking about cardamom, we're talking about like Yemeni and Yemen and Yemeni coffee as a whole. And so to see that kind of switch to understand, oh, this is a whole cuisine and these are the flavors that we like is really cool. What I like that Flavor in the Menu called out this year is they specifically said global pastries. They called out global pastries as one of their top 10 trends. I love this because, like, as we know, we are sweet girlies on the pod. We love we love a treat, you know, that's who we are. But also like pastries play into that kind of disappearing day part, right? My favorite day part, which is the snack day part, but can also play into desserts and into kind of like what breakfast looks like, depending on who you are. We saw that this year already with that za'atar pastry that Starbucks launched. But also like to your point, Cam, about beverages being like the big push. Like it's crazy to me that Dunkin' has already done ube.
Yeah.
And like training. What's also interesting is how they're training the customer as to what ube tastes like. So now because Dunkin' had this huge like drink that was amazing, which was like their potion that was, you know, a latte that was ube and coffee. So it had this really cool color split to it, but they called out ube as something that has marshmallow flavor. And so now people like think of ube as marshmallow. As someone who grew up eating ube, do you think ube equals marshmallow?
That's a good question.
It all kind of just depends on like where you get that from. Like to me personally, like the ube I grew up eating has kind of more nuances of like coconut, but I can definitely see where people get the comparison of like ube tasting like marshmallow. Like there's definitely notes of marshmallow in it. What I think is very important, even with like anything, and this is like our job, is like how do we take something that is not so common to just general population and how do we actually make it approachable and actually calling out the fact that, because if it was just mentioned as like ube, people would be like, oh wait, what is that? So having the call out of marshmallow, something that people can like ground themselves in, that it's very familiar, it takes the edge off of that, of the concept being a little bit scary to them. Be like, oh, I don't know what ube is, but I know what marshmallows taste like. And then that's all that there. It's almost a little bit of like an educational moment where, you know, especially with like the younger generation, they're a lot more inclined to actually look something up to where it's like, oh, okay, this is what ube is. It's cool. It's purple. Like this is beautiful. Purple. It's going to look great on my Instagram story.
On my Instagram, on my TikTok. Everyone's going to think I'm so cool because I have this cool beverage.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, now I'm really hungry for dessert, which is not an uncommon occurrence, but I'm going to jump in with my favorite called out global flavor that is largely in desserts, which is tahini or tahina, which is that sesame flavor. So, like, you've probably, I mean, I'm starting to see it across menus. I've seen it, like, shaved on a sundae or, like, in a black sesame tahini ice cream, or like in a milkshake. And it also just made me think that ice cream is kind of, aside from pastries, because I'm so excited about the global pastries. I love a pastry, like please, and give it to me in a weird flavor because even better, like buttery, delicious, interesting. I guess I really am Gen Z. But anyway, ice cream underratedly is a space that pushes the boundaries on flavors all the time.
Definitely. I mean, like retail, like with Van Leeuwen, you know, we've tried the like honey mustard Dijon pretzel ice cream. We've brought in the ranch dressing ice cream. A few years ago at a conference, I did a hot Cheetos ice cream concept that had like a ranch creme anglaise with it, showing melted ice cream in a different application, which may have been before its time.
I know. They also did a Kraft mac and cheese ice cream, But now like the weird combo thing is making me think about, I actually just saw this morning. I don't know if you guys saw this yet, but they're launching, I think it's a Super Bowl promo. They're launching a collab of Totino's pizza rolls and cinnamon toast crunch.
Dude, I
don't know how we
pizza
feel
rolls.
about that. So please weigh in.
Is it, before I agree and go like, just like my wildest dreams, are these pizza rolls filled with like cinnamon sugar, or is it cinnamon sugar flavored pizza, which could be good? It could be good. You know, a lot of cuisines, it's very global pastry of them,
Yes.
honestly, you know.
True.
How on trend.
It is the cereal. It's not the pizza roll.
Oh,
Yeah.
boo.
It's like pizza flavored
Boo.
cereal.
Wait,
No.
what?
Yeah, I don't know what
Okay.
they're doing, but
See,
I will have to try it if possible. They're only launching or selling like 1,000 boxes of it.
Oh God.
You best
I
believe
mean-
I
Gotta get
set
our
my
hands on
timer.
one. Yeah.
Jeez. I like each other. I like each of those separately, but not together. Not the most healthy thing in the world, but you know, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Speaking of health. So health and wellness is like the other biggest trend that we've seen transform over the last few years, but even longer than that. I feel like as far back as I can remember, there's always new information coming out about what healthy dieting looks like, or not even diet related, but like what healthy food is, what is healthy, what's not healthy. We shouldn't label things as healthy or not healthy. But specifically this year, I think naturally one of our biggest focuses in food service and how consumers are going to be changing their behavior is the rise of all the GLP-1 drugs that are now on the market and that so many people are taking, because we've already heard that people are consuming less and they're consuming different foods than they normally eat. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. And we've already seen some retail brands and also some food service operators menuing or developing specifically to cater to those consumers. So what have you
Yeah.
guys seen or heard?
I mean, Smoothie King, they hopped on that immediately. They had a menu in October, I want to say, which like considering like how quickly the drug grew and like it kind of getting announced and becoming part of like vernacular in January, to have that kind of turnaround for a player as big as Smoothie King is truly amazing. Also means that they're really paying attention to what's going on in health and wellness, which cements them as a really strong health and wellness player, I think. Do either of you know anyone who has taken one and seen their kind of food habits change at all?
Yeah, I know someone really close to me. They've been taking it for, I think it's been a few months, and they've dropped like, I think between like 15 and 20 pounds.
Wow.
And every time, you know, I like talk to them or we meet up, their eating habits are different. Like they mentioned to me that, you know, they can't eat as much anymore. They always just have this like feeling of fullness. Which I mean, hey, that's good. In terms of how and I mean, like, this is kind of case by case, where it's like, you know, they are starting to take their health just like a little bit more seriously. You know, if they're going to order a burger, which, hey, that's totally cool. You got protein, you got your carbs and everything. But, you know, instead of having the side of French fries, you know, they might get like a side salad.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I also definitely know people close to me who, some of them have had no side effects at all and just feel like they're less hungry, and it seems like their stomach shrank overnight. In which case I would imagine I would be prioritizing dessert, but like, who's to say? And some people have really like tough side effects that feel kind of like sickish, and like there's a real adjustment period. So, I mean, yeah, it'll also be interesting to see of the people who take those drugs and then stop taking them, like how that's also going to change their appetite and like whether it's effective long term. But have you guys seen any other health trends that have like been called out for this year?
maybe it's just me, but I'm constantly getting new like Instagram ads that are telling me like this is the thing that you want. Like we saw AG1, like the greens company supplement, they launched with Starbucks, which is huge. So it's not just about what I'm eating at home. What is really interesting and what Data Essential called out in their trends report is called colostrum, which is a dairy colostrum. Okay, there we go. Which is a dairy supplement. So it's the type of milk that mammals produce when they first give birth. And so that's like about to be the new big thing that it like supplement that's in everything. And just to see the world talk about something that is so personal like birth and like birth adjacent, granted it's, cows in this, it's bovine in this application, I think is just an interesting thing to think about in terms of the individual and how that's going to show up on food service menus.
It's giving the people who like turn their placenta into pills and then take them as supplements, but
not the placenta pill.
I'm sorry. But like that's really what came to my mind. It's just the cow version. I mean, we already drink so much cow's milk and we're not cows, obviously. But I don't know. That one just, I mean, it won't be me. It won't be me. That's all I'm saying.
What have you seen, Cam? What are you interested in?
I mean, I know I don't look it. And you guys know that I like working out. I like going to the gym, but just anything high protein. I love that there are some of the kind of fast casual QSR places that are offering, and they will tout that it's like, hey, this is higher in protein, because there are individuals like myself that are looking for something that is a little bit lower in calorie, but higher in protein. One of my favorites being the spinach and feta egg white wrap at Starbucks. It's like my favorite little item that I will treat myself to every now and then. And I love it. It's a quick bite. It's tasty. And just the fact that we're also seeing that manifest in like CPG, so like consumer packaged goods, a lot of the drinks that are geared for like just higher protein, whether that is kind of like your more dairy based drinks or your non-dairy based protein beverages, which are a thing and they're really good. So the fact that like high protein, we've seen this trend manifest like throughout the years, but the fact that it's still a thing makes me very happy because I'm the target consumer for this.
Kim's
I'm
like,
trying to
give
get
it
swole and
me.
buff, man. Like I need my protein.
No, I have a lot of friends who are always after the high protein stuff. I mean, to be so honest, the innovation in the high protein space never ceases to amaze me. I feel like every time I walk into a bodega, there's like a new high protein version of something that I never could have imagined would be high protein. The other day, I literally bought high protein gummy bears because I was like, we got to try this. Like, what is that? And how am I getting 18 grams of protein eating these gummy bears? Like,
she said, I'm going to go back for seconds. Give me another handful.
Like, do you
I'm
have other
swole,
flavors?
baby.
Heck yeah.
Okay, let's talk about bring us to our last and final trend.
Okay,
we'll
so
talk
for
about,
our
Kelly.
final trend, I'm gonna butcher this name, casualization. Did I do it? Yeah.
Yes.
Renee, I really think that you should explain this one to us because you were excited about it.
Yeah. I have feelings about this one.
Please.
And so casualization is of both dishes. So like we're seeing it in pasta becoming a more casual food, but we're also seeing it in like dive bar culture really exploding. And as someone from Chicago, where a significant portion of our bars are like quote unquote dive bars, like shout out Archie's that I live down the street from. They sell the most hams in the world. But also say like, yeah, it all is like about like kind of elevating like low culture into high culture. So there are all these trends that converge into the casualization of eating out. Am I a fan of this trend? No, I don't think so.
Tell us more.
I just think that dining out and eating out is a special occasion.
Okay.
And if I'm going to a sit down restaurant, you know, I want to be served. I think that in part, like the casualization of eating, right, is putting the onus on the consumer to cover costs or labor. And I'm not the biggest fan of that.
What comes to mind more like on the menu, on the plate, is bringing things that are really elevated and making it more casual. Like, let's throw caviar on a charcuterie board that we're sharing, you know, type of thing. Because that to me is like, yeah, I want to eat more fancy things more regularly.
What I'm really curious about is how this is going to impact like our chains, our casual dining chains like Applebee's and TGI Fridays that have this kind of like dive bar, neighborhood bar, like feel to them with all the memorabilia on the walls and what their offering is. And so like, because of this, like them putting lobster on the menu, like a lobster mac and cheese. So you get that like super elevated like dish. Is it going to make more consumers flock to these places because they get that kind of dive bar experience?
It's interesting.
Cam, what do you think, Cam?
I mean,
Sorry.
I love this whole. What I find interesting about the casualization trend is that it's kind of like a mashup of literally a lot of the things that we kind of talked about. Renee, you and I, we talked about third culture cuisine. It's a fusion that is formed by a lived experience. And with that food, it's inherently fun. It's lighthearted, but you know, it allows for the individual to connect to any like unique experience of growing up with multiple identities. So I think with a lot of the food that we're seeing, there's a lot of like first generation, like adults. So like me, I'm first generation Filipino American. One of my things that I did was I made a Caesar salad where I changed up the anchovy component to use a fermented shrimp paste that is a condiment in Filipino culture called bagoong. I hated it as a kid, but now I see why it's so prevalent and it gets used in a culinary sense. And also with like the Caesar salad, I grew up going to steakhouses all the time. My dad was like a big salad person. And so he was a wedge salad person. I'm a Caesar salad person. So that's where kind of like my lived experience
big
is.
Salad,
and here's
guys.
my Filipino like culture comes in. But you have like these mashup of flavors. Like I think another good example of this is I think you've made it, Renee, the gochujang buttered noodles. On like from the New York Times. Yeah, it's an Eric Kim recipe. It has over like 7,000 reviews if I remember correctly.
That sounds
And
good.
I'm all for it. It's a lot of fun. At least that's how I look at the casualization trend, is just food being taken less seriously and people just having fun with it.
Okay, so my hot take.
Okay.
Right.
Tell us.
Yeah.
We are
spill.
talking about like, you know, that authentic food, turning it casual. I firmly believe,
Oh.
maybe not firmly.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I like medium softness tofu agree. Like if we're going to use the tofu scale of like somewhere in between the silken tofu and the firm
That's a
tofu,
new
that is where I
scale.
lie, you know? That the casualization trend, not everything can be casualized. And we are going to lose authenticity and intricacies of a lot of dishes by turning them into casual foods.
Whoa.
Thoughts?
That's heavy.
That is heavy.
Because authentic, I mean, there's a class that I took in school where we talked about like what does authentic mean. This is very like we don't need an answer for this
means
because this
trendy.
is a very and it's like someone's authentic version of one thing is like could be something completely different to another person. you have like obviously regional differences and all of that. But I mean, to your main point, it's like not everything can be casualized. Now I'm trying to figure out as a chef, like, how can I want to prove that wrong.
So what in your mind, Renee, is something that you cannot imagine being casualized?
Yeah.
Okay, I cannot imagine beef Wellington being casualized because that just turns into pigs in a blanket. We have that already.
That's true.
That's what I'm saying is that a lot of times we have something that already exists. Like, can I put a duck salad in with a hot dog and be like mini beef Wellington? Yes, I guess.
Sure.
That sounds like a great idea for a dive bar snack, listeners. But I don't think you can call that beef Wellington. And so I think we're losing the core of these dishes. Another one that's a great example is coq au vin. Would love to see someone turn that into a quinoa bowl. Like, I can't, what is coq au vin dip, Like, these things, the way that we turn food casual, like, I just think that you lose the sense of what it is at its core unless you can show me otherwise. So tell me. Go ahead.
I was going to say, here's a question for you. So for the things that you just mentioned, I don't want to butcher their name, but is it more because, you say that it gets lost and I totally understand what you're saying. Is that more because those dishes are known for being what they are, more based on like the method of preparation that gets lost? Or is it just that the flavors get lost? Does that make sense?
Yes. The answer is yes.
Okay.
It's both.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's both because there's like, if you don't have the technique, if you are making a souffle, right? And you don't have that skill, it's not a souffle. It's like weird wet cheese, if it doesn't rise, it's not a souffle.
For sure.
If you turn it into something else, is that not a cracker? Is that not like I can't even say this word in French. The grugeot? Is that what it is?
Gougere?
Gougere? Yeah. Is that like, at what point are we changing what things are and they're just other things that exist? And that is like where I think
that's sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. We've seen so many iterations of that trend, but it's really just, let's take like a little piece of what's already really popular and like make it new. And then it's this whole new thing and consumers get so excited, but then it's like, but also, I don't know. It's just like a cycle. But I guess that's also just like the root of innovation, right? Like you can only get what's next if you take from what came before.
That's good.
That is so
words
insightful,
of wisdom.
That was very good.
Yeah, that was like, man, put that in a book, girlfriend. Like, good God.
Wait,
Okay.
Cam, what you got?
Yeah.
In what sense? Like, what do you
All of
looking
it.
for?
If you think anything can be casualized, if you think that this trend has so many legs and you don't lose the core of what the dish is,
Yeah.
tell me what you think that food is and what it would look like.
Oh my God, you're putting me on the spot. If anything, because you picked like really specific examples. I did not like buckle my seatbelt like hard enough because I was just like, oh my God, she came in hot. You're kind of proving me wrong here, actually. Like,
Wow.
you like the coq au vin example, or no, actually the beef Wellington example. I think that was, yes, is it a play on pigs in a blanket? You are right. However, I do think that there is something inherently fun about that. The beef Wellington bites, like mini beef Wellingtons, like it's outrageous. It is wild because like we all know how like hard it is to execute that dish and to just take it and make it the mini. It's like, it's
Right.
just wild,
You
but that's
can't
okay.
But you can't just take it and make it the mini. You have to change it to make it more casual, right? Because otherwise you're just going to be served the tiniest beef Wellington at like a French like fine dining restaurant and you're going to Or
Well,
it's not
that's
even
what
a
I
French
was
food.
just gonna
Or
say is,
English,
like-
you know, like what is the point of differentiation? What could someone do to make a beef Wellington casual, approachable, but still true to what it is, and easier to execute back of house?
Part of me, I don't know why, but part of me,
Just like,
my
go
mind,
for it.
my mind immediately went to I'm just gonna say like a savory kind of like Pop-Tart essentially, or like an empanada, if you will, where it's like it's still encased in pastry and you have the fillings in there. You can have the meat diced up, maybe pre-cooked already, maybe raw. You have your duxelle in there, and then you can serve it with kind of any sauce that you really want. I think that would be a really fun appetizer. So where it's like you take out all the operational complexities out of it. Yeah, granted, you're not going to get a medium rare, which by the way, again, we've already talked about this. Medium rare steak, not, in my opinion, it's not that great. But anyway, different, like besides the point, you still kind of get the vibe of a beef Wellington with a lot less operational complexities.
I
What do you
also
think?
feel like beef Wellington is an interesting one to be stuck on here because maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just from my perspective, but I feel like Americans are not as familiar with a beef Wellington as they would be with like another.
I disagree.
I disagree with that, too.
I entirely disagree with that. Gordon Ramsay has fundamentally changed this country.
Yes.
I guess I was wrong. Stupid Callie. You guys are like, definitely not. Okay.
Idiot sandwich.
That's exactly.
Silly.
Say it to me. One of my first chefs that I ever worked for was on. He won Hell's Kitchen. Chef Scott.
Shout out.
Yeah. Shout out Chef Scott wherever you are in Vegas. Thank you. He taught me how to bake bread. Love you. Okay, back to this beef Wellington. We're coming to the end of our episode here. It sounds like, Cam, you kind of have an idea. I would love to hear what kind of sauce you guys think that this should be dipped into, because you can't serve a tiny pastry without a sauce.
Definitely not.
No. I mean, I would love to do some type of like crazy, I mean, if we're going to make it casual, but something that I've played around with in the past and is really cool is I've taken au jus packets, to like your pre-made stuff that you would get in like the gravy section, reconstituting it in a little bit of water to create a paste and mixing it into ranch or sour cream to make an au jus ranch. It's kind of wild. It sounds crazy, but it's like umami, like MSG goodness bomb that I think would be dope to serve this with. Maybe throw in some like caramelized onions in there to give like French onion soup vibes to that. I mean, I could also see some type of like creamy horseradish sauce, maybe some type of like Dijonnaise, but I'm kind of vibing with the au jus ranch with some like caramelized onion and like action in that.
You know, Cam, I unfortunately am a ranch hater, but I would try that for you.
Oh my God, that means a lot.
So we're not here to talk about Callie's wrong idea that ranch is not good.
Facts.
Cam, it sounds like you have a really good idea for a recipe. This is right. This is what we do. We have the honor and privilege of coming up with wild ideas and seeing if they will actually work. Part of the dish course is after every episode and we talk about hot takes, we always think about how we can adjust that hot take, right? Like, how can we turn that into a recipe? How can we take this episode and everything that encompassed it and all these delicious things that we talk about and turn them into something that you can actually eat? So you came at me. You said, no, Renee, everything can be turned casual. You are wrong. I want you to prove to me that I am wrong. So I think our follow-up from this is going to be a tasting of a tiny Little Beef Wellington with a delicious au jus ranch.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I can't wait to prove you wrong.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. You know?
Unfortunately, because I'm not in Chicago, I will only be able to enjoy your delicious mini beef Wellingtons and maybe not the au jus ranch dipping sauce. Sorry. I mean, I would try it for you, but I will follow up and watch them on our socials. So make sure to follow us. Give us a follow at Marlin Connections, one word, on Instagram, and also at Action Food Service, but that's ACXION Food Service. Also Marlin Connections on LinkedIn. And stay tuned for next week because we're going to talk about cheese.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.